Good morning, Masotla Mahle, sinivusele sinimukele namhla ehlelweni Kusile breakfast show sibonga kakhulu ukuthi namhla ekseni nivuke nathi kungilesibili. It is the 28th of December 2021, only 4 days left ukuthi singene emnyakeni wa 2022. Kusibusise ukuthi sivukele nje namhla ekseni ukuthi umdala usigcine kwade kwafika lilanga la namuhla. Siseme nje ukuthi nibe nemphela sonto lebusisekile nelanga lelibusisekile la itolo. Asisibukena kumbiko losuka khona idiko letempilo. Langeni itolo kuhlola abantu labangu 734 kwatfolakala ukuthi labangu 118 banemkhuhlane COVID-19. Sishiye abantu labasikhombisa itolo emhlabeni kanti labasesibhedlela labelashwa kwabangu 107 lasebaluleme inombolo letinsha bangu 902 kanti selo waphethuko lomkhuhlane lesabawutfolile sebangu 64,561 bese ukuthi lesabashiye emhlabeni bangu 1,284. Active cases seweme ku 7,432 kanti lasabagomeka lokuphelele bangu 295,041 lesekwenda 25.3% wepopulation welive le total population yesive samaSwati. Kanti sisabuke nje wona umkhuhlane iCovid-19 kube nekudeleka kwema flights kanti lamanye akhanseliwe ngemsombuluko maholiday ke abantu abanengi lebebahlose kuvakashela lamanye amave athekabetekile ngaloko lokwendekile ngemsombuluko emave athekabetekile afaya ekhathi live laseMelika kanye nelive laseChina lapho ke abantu bebaphoke phele kuyovakashela khona kanti lokho kubanga ukuthi disebenzi 13 ndiza ditfolakala ukuthi letinye tato test positive for umkhuhlane COVID-19 kanti labanye okhanzakala ukuthi beba ku isolation kwadzengakala ukuthi over 2,200 ama flights akhanselwe ngemsombuluko ngaso sona lesizathu lesi kanti ke amacases ayachubeka nje yenyuka emhlabeni wonke emaveni onke kakhulukati labo labathola hlobo lolusha lomkhuhlane Omicron variant. Inhlangano kamhlaba yetempilo solo yagcizelela ukuthi abantu abawugomele lomkhuhlane kakhulu ngoba uma ngabe sowugomele mathuba ukuthi uhamba uyolashwa lesibhedlela ugule kakhulu abamancane kakhulu bangabe sowugomele lomkhuhlane kanti lokunye labaphinze bacucutelako ngiwo ema booster shots emavela amanyendi lasavele awaniketa kanti lokunye even laseNingizimu Africa ama tributes solo ayangena la soka khona ku Pope US President Joe Biden ayanayo uyawulilela umndeni wa Archbishop Desmond Tutu loshiye emhlabeni ngelisonto shiye emhlabeni ke abeneminyaka lengemashumi la imfica kanti ke namhlanje imvo lakhe limemetele ukuthi umgcwabo wakhe utawubanjwa ngemgcibelo kulempela sonto lesiyakiyo inkonzo ke itawucala ngensimbi yelishumi ekuseni. Asibahlele timakethe nasibuya sibuya singene etindzaba entetfu.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3 hash and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
I do the most.
Watch local TV on the go with the Eswatini TV app for only 20 emalangeni. Come on. Do the most with Eswatini TV app. Download from Google Play Store or App Store.
We're good together. Everywhere you go, MTN.
Asibinze sinimukele Kusile breakfast show sitawungena etindzaba entetfu tekucala. Sekuqalile ukuhlakulwa kwamasimu ebukhosi la Cwebetelako wavukela ensimini yebukhosi esihlabeni lapho khona afike abungula kulensimu yebukhosi emajaha ahloniphe imithetho ebetempilo yokugwema kwanza kwemkhuhlane iCovid-19.
La Cwebetelako aphuma ngedingane yaphelela ensimini yebukhosi esihlabeni. Ilangeni lekuqala lekuhlakulwa kwamasimu yebukhosi la Cwebetelako afike abungula kulensimu yebukhosi. Ngesikhathi achubeka nemsebenzi bekade yafaka itifonyo aphindze akhweshelene ahloniphe imithetho yebetempilo yokugwema kwanza kwemkhuhlane iCovid-19. Kulabo somabhizinisi labancane lesekuphele iminyaka solo bazuza emkhosini wenqwala ngekuthi bathengisele emajaha lokuya ethunjeni. Bathi sekufunzene bantwana bathi mate baqedza nesikolo ngabozuka laba batholako.
Ngitelenye ibhizinisi kusukela nje ngabakhona nginabantwana abaningi. Labaningi sebeyaqedile isikolo ngicediswe ngiyo le business lena ngiyathi nakuphela umnyaka iyeti inqwala. Nayifika inqwala ngiba nemali lekuthi ngikhona ke esikolweni ngiyovela nginanamahafu bangihafulele phindze ngichubeke nemabhizinisi sichubeka kubosomhlolo labe sisebenza khona nakhona phindze uyithola phindze uyocedzela esikolweni vele ngitifundisele nje abantu bacedzile bonke bo form 5 kude yo drop out ile ngenzaba yayo le business enqala
lokuthengisa siqalena kuphuma lisekwane enkabezweni salandela sayana esikhaleni selisekwane sabuya saphinde sayothengisana sebayela ukhunini nakhona sathenga lo sesilasihlabeni yana lokusho ukuthi kuyasita ngoba siyakhona nekufaka abantwana esikolweni siyakhona nekuthi sivalavale tikhaya la kushoda khona la tidingo tethu empilweni. Sibonga kakhulu nje inkosini yethu bana yethi kufanele ukuthi siyahlehla kanye nayo. Ngana sinithengisela lelibutho layo kufanele ukuthi siyahlehla ngoba ngeke lisebende lilambile.
Libutho lichubekele esigodlweni elidzini esibayeni lapho khona lifike lachitha injobo. Khona esibayeni bekakhona nemakhosikazi engonyama nemazinyane. Sibili libutho litavukela ensimini yebukhosi kumazibeke.
Kusasa majaha kumazibeke ayatha.
Lobika kwethu Ndzabeni ngisandile makhanya bikana zwele masuku esigodlweni elidzini.
Umphathi wesifundza sakaHhohho Mfanenkosi Thanzile wekhuta umkhuba wesive sakulesifundza sokubamba imicimbi kulamaholide bese asisayilandzeli imigomo yekwanza yekuvikela kwanza komkhuhlane i-COVID-19. Akhuluma eMlindazo Mfanenkosi ukhumbute eMaswati ukuthi lo mkhuhlane solo uyingoti futhi kukhona labasishiyako emhlabeni ngenxa yawo.
Ngekusho kwelitiko letemphilo nakusuka lenyanga lesetulu bantfu lebebasishiyile emhlabeni ngenxa yemkhuhlane i-COVID-19 bebang-1248 kepha umbiko leliwukhiphe ngelisontfo uveta kwekuthi sebang-1277. Loku-ke kusho ukuthi kulenyanga lesetulu bantfu labasishiyile emhlabeni kusuka mhla lulunye kuya mhla tinge-26 bang-29. Umphathi wesifundza sakaHhohho Umfanenkosi Thanzile uthi imibiko yekusishiya kwesive emhlabeni iyabakhatsata kakhulu basifundza njengobe kulabasishiyile ngelisontfo labatsatfu bakulesifundza.
Sonke lokho sikubonile ukuthi bantu bagcwele kakhulu etindzaweni tekutijabulisa. Solo siyawufaka umyalo esiveni ukuthi noma batijabulisa abantu abakhumbule ukuthi umkhuhlane we-COVID-19 solo awukapheli, solo ukhona. Nebantu solo basishiya emhlabeni ngalomkhuhlane. Siyacela nje ukuthi sive sitinake sikwende konke lokushiwa baka health ngoba ngalendlela ukugcwala ngayo la kuletindzawo labajabulisa khona kuyesabisa. Nabo labantu ngathi betindzawo siyabacela ukuthi abalende lichaza labo phela ukuthi bantu bakubonakala ukuthi baphephile emkhuhlaneni. Solo siyagcizelela esiveni ukuthi noma New Year eta sivele sakubona ngakhisimisi lokugcwalelana kwebantu. Na New Year siyathi ukuthi bantu bayaplanela ukuthi batawugcwala. Kodwa ke sithi bantu abahambise kuphepha embili, abahambise kuphila embili. Nekwekuthi bantu phela bayacelwa sive solo siyacelwa ukuthi phela abantu abayojova, bawujovele lo mkhuhlane. Ngoba kuta New Year nje utawukhanja ukuthi baningi bagcwele lapha etindzaweni tabo tekutijabulisa abakajovi nekujova. Kanti noma ujovile akusho ukuthi salotiphatha noma kanjani. Bantu abachubeke batiphathe kahle. COVID-19 ayikapheli siletinayo.
Nanoma etikhula tinombolo tebantu labatfola lo mkhuhlane nalabo labasishiyako emhlabeni, imetamo yahulumende yekulwa nekwanza kwawo iyabonakala njengoba bantfu lesebeluleme kuwo bang-54,943 kulabangu-64,443 lesebake baba nawo kuleli. Etindzabeni teSwatini TV kubika Nelsiwendla ngamandla kunambongwa Dube Yembabane.
Impelasonto yakhisimusi ihambisene nekuchitheka kwengati lapha eveni. Umchumanisi wamaphoyisa nesive Superintendent Phindile Vilakati uthi kushone bantfu laba-18 kulempelasonto ngetindlela letahlukene. Basolwa labaningi babheke ukuthi bavele enkantolo ngalesibili.
Noma khisimusi kusikhathi senjabulo ude nelusizi kulabanye njengobe balahlekelwe dihlobo nebangani. Umchumanisi wamaphoyisa nesive Superintendent Phindile Vilakati uthi kushone bantfu laba-18 ngetindlela letahlukene kulempelasonto.
Singemaphoyisa singathi impelasonto lesisuka kuyo ayikabi ngilenhle kahle kulandzela ngokuthi sishiwe bantfu labangu-18 ngetigigaba letihlukahlukene. Sineke singemaphoyisa bese tinhlitweni tetfu tekuthi wonke umuntu lokhona evela kangwana phephe ngato tonke tikhatsi. Lokhu-ke kusikhombisile ukuthi kukhona nekufuna mhlawumbe sikucinise lapha nalapha sisatiphethe sisive kanjalo-ke nathi singemaphoyisa sisaphoyisa. Labagcine nje bashiya ngekubulalana babengu-8 la khona labanye bagwaziwe, labanye badutshulwa, labanye bashaywa lokufaka ekhatsi kushaywa imoto.
Vilakati uthi labanye labashonile bafaka ekhatsi labatsatfu lababulewe ngumlilo, umntwana loshaywe ngugesi nebantfu labatsatfu labamite emifuleni.
Singathi nje siveni siyacela ukuthi njengaloku vele imvula isechubeke njalo sive senkosi asingalokothi siyowela emfuleni noma ngabe sijwayele kangakanani kuhamba kuleto tindzawo ngoba ingoti vele yabonakala ukuthi ikhona. Siyabe solo sikhona ke singemaphoyisa sibukile kuphepha kwasesive. Nalabo ke labasahlongoda kwenta kucala sithi asathe lethuba sibekhude. Sitawube sibukeka liso lelikhozi vele tonke tindzawo kwenta siciniseko sokuthi isive senkosi siyaphepha. Siyacela-ke naso sive njengalokhu solo sikuwumkhankaso lothi amaphoyisa nesive abambisene ngedlela lobuhle atawulwa nabokucala netingoti.
Njengobe tinkantolo lapha eveni tingasasebenzi ngempelasonto nangemaholide, lababoshelwe lamacala babhekeke ukuthi bavele noma-ke bavusele bomanji labehlukene ngalesibili. Kulabo labasangakabanjwa labatsiniseka ebucaleni, amaphoyisa aye athi ayikho impunga yehlathi. Ndzabeni Eswatini TV kubeka Jamusi Mavimbela na Fortune Dlangamandla eMbabane.
Imvotala eneminyaka lengama-30 nesiphohlongo yakakhuphuka ngaphansi kwenkundla yasemkhiweni itholakale ishonile ekhaya layo kusa kwangemsombuluko. Ngekusho kwamake walemvotsa umufi kusolakala ukuthi ugecwe enhloko ngelizembe ngulenye indvotsa lekathi beyimsola ukuthi uphinga umkayo.
Joyce Maseko wakakhuphuka longumake wemufi lokusolakala ukuthi ugecwe ngelizembe enhloko udibane netimanga kusa kwangemsombuluko umathi uyohlola indvotsana yakhe kulandzela kwekuthi indvotsa lekayisola ukuthi iyibulele ifike kuye ngensimbi ye12 ebusuku imbikele ukuthi sebashayene nendvotsana yakhe kodwa uyishaye kancane. Uthi lokummangalisile ukuthi bathe uma befika endlini yayo bayikhanzayilele edamini lengadi base bathinza emaphoyisa bafike ayitfola ukuthi seyishonile.
Ngiphaphama sekusilongo bengivutile nakulala sekubo 5 ngishaye lesiswami ngisasidibane lapha. Sibane nasisi ngimchazele story ukuthi lapha nkuleko kunjeni. Sifike ekhaya enkuleko no kude umuntu. Ngithathe ucingo ngimshayele alubanjwa ngumuntu. Ede sisafika avulela minyango. Navula la minyango athi sisi nangikuleko nami ufile. Nangiya afune sisi kumphakamisa ngoba lengadi ngala inhloko takhe afuna ukuthi ungasamphakamisa umntwana make lona sosetandleni semthetho.
Umxhumanisi wesive nemaphoyisa aphindile vilakade uvumile lo mbiko. Etindzabeni Eswatini TV ngibongosi Magagula kakhuphuka.
Gogo Glory Zwane wasensingizini uthi kuhlupheka kuyevana kulandzela ukuthi izanele Zwane kanye namlambo Zwane babashiye emhlabeni ngemuva kokuthi bashele endlini lapho bebalele khona ngekusa kwangelisondvo.
Glory Zwane uthi bashacekile kuleli khaya ngekushiwa ngilamalunga emndeni njengoba kuleli khaya kati ulala etiko.
Bamshayela samlandile amaphoyisa mayifika ke la afike khona kwathola ukuthi vele bantwana bashele khona la nabakashi bona mase bachaza bathi abakashi bona ngoba vele impahla zabo bedingakashi kodwa bona bashonile yindlu lebevele kushe konke lokusekhathi bosofa washa nje ke konke abanalo anti wakhe alele khona mabawachaza bathi kuyabonakala ukuthi abelele ngala dining room lo mntwana lo mfana lo anti wakhe alele ngale kamela kodwa idamile ukuthi mababuka amaphoyisa uhambile noma ugacile ngamadolo ongena ngale kamera la afike aphelela khona lo anti wakhe basho ukuthi uyabonakala ukuthi abelele embhedeni kodwa ugcina asawile. Mabefika ke amaphoyisa ubone emunye umuntu lofike wathi uyedlula khona bedlula wabona ukuthi akulapha kungathi sekunje wasushaya inyanda leyo ke usito nje ukuthi inkosi yami lo ngaba nesihe asisite kulesimo lesibhekene naso asisiso lesikahle vele ngiloko nje bantwana.
Zwane uthi kumatima kulomndeni ukuthi batawuthatha ini bayihlanganise nani kuphumeni kuze bafihle letihlobo tabo. Kanti longafisa kuphosa lishe esivivaneni angashayela inombolo lethi 7631 8453 7631 8453 kubika Sifiso Onxumalo nginasimuva shongwe ensingisini esigodini sasesibovini.
Kube nemacala netigameko letingetulu kwemakhulu lasihlanu emigwacweni yalapha eveni emalangeni lamane. Loku kuvele embikweni umaphoyisa loveta ukuthi kushone bantfu labatsatfu emigwacweni yelive kulamalanga lamane kwabakhona nalababoshelwa kushayela abanathile. Umxhumanisi wamaphoyisa nesive Superintendent Phindile Vilakade uthi lalabashonile bebatihambela ngetinyawo.
Esokwini lwangemsombuluko kube nemoto leshayisako yase iyamoncoka ngendlela lesimanga emfabandvu. Lababonele ngoti bathi bamangele ukuthi laba bengekhathi kuyo le moto baphume baphila kanjani. Lengoti lena ingeta sibalo saleto letendeke ngempela sondvo letinye letihambe nemphefumulo. Imibiko yemaphoyisa lephume kusukela ngalesihlanu evikini leliphelile iveta ukuthi kube nemacala langetulu kwa-500 nakubalwa kude kufikwe embikweni lophume ngemsombuluko. Letine taletingoti tihambe nemphefumulo kanti umchumanisi wemaphoyisa nesive Superintendent Phindile Vilakazi uthi labantu labasishiyile emhlabeni bebangekho nasetimotweni.
Labashiya etingodini tetimoto kusukela ngalesine kuze kube namuhla noma ngelisonto babe bathathu. Bonke-ke laba labathathu labashiya emhlabeni bekungilabo labahamba ngetinyawo.
Lenye yaletingoti temgwaco letibikiwe ngemaphoyisa kusukela ngalesihlanu nguleyo leyendeke kalobamba endzaweni lekuthiwa kusemlindazwe. Vilakazi uthi kule ngoti lena kube nadzadze loneminyaka lengu-32 loshayiswe yimoto endzaweni yasemlindazwe. Le moto leshayise lo muntu kubikwa ukuthi ayikemi ngemuva kwale ngoti. Lo dzadze loshayisekile kuthiwa ulimele kakhulu enhloko waphuthunyiswa esibhedlela sahulumende lesikhulu eMbabane lapho atfolakele ukuthi sewusishiyile emhlabeni. Amaphoyisa acela longaba nelwati ngale moto leyende lobucala ashayele inhlabamkhosi lethi 999 noma ashaye bo9 labane. Tindzabeni teSwatini TV kubika Themkos Mavimbela ngina Fortune Dlangamandla eMbabane.
Babe loneminyaka lenge-36 budzala lowelusa tinkhomo ucishe wadla khisimusi esitokisini kulandzela ukuthi yaboshelwe kutholakala nenkhomo lehlinziwe kanye nensango endlini. Lo babe waboshwa ngamaphoyisa asemliba sekusele emalanga lamane ukuthi kube ngikhisimusi. Lo babe uthole ibheyili kulandzela ukuthi inkantolo ivume sicelo sakhe.
Lobabe lowelusa tinkhomo longumzwandile Muzi Fakudze loneminyaka lengu-36 uboshwe naSibusiso Gilbert Dlamini loneminyaka lengu-42 naye lowelusa tinkhomo. Emacala lababekwe wona ekutholakala nenkhomo lebulewe lekusola kutsi kwebiwa. Baboshelwe nekuthi baphindze batfolakala nensango lelinganiselwa ku-21.09 kg ngaphandle kwemvume. Laba lababili baboshwa ngemaphoyisa asemliba mhla ka-21 kule nyanga. Kulandzela kuboshwa kwabo babese bafaka sicelo sekutokela ngephandle enkantolo lenkulu lapho baveta ukuthi angeke bawavume lamacala lababekwe wona. Fakutse utshele inkantolo ukuthi kwafika amakhelwane wakhe longuSibusiso Dlamini wacela kubeka inyama efrijini yakhe njengoba yena etegesi. Uthi sewuvile ukuthi le nyama yenkomo bengumduka igcinwe iminyaka lesihlanu ngolona laboshwe naye. Fakutse uchazele inkantolo ukuthi uve nokuthi le nkomo yabulawa ngobe beyigula njengobe beyingaze itifele ingasadleki. Endzabeni yensangu Fakutse utshele inkantolo ukuthi lo mtfundi wetinkuku washiywa kuye sihlobo saleli khaya lalelusela tinkhomo. Fakutse uchazele inkantolo nokuthi lolo washiya lensangu uhlala eNingizimu Afrika kanti yena bekangadi nekuthi ushiya sikhwama lesinayo lensangu lapha ngekhathi. Uthi naye wetfuka ngesikhathi amaphoyisa asemliba afika endlini yakhe ambuta ngenyama nalensangu. Bobabili labasolwa bathi banebantfwana lababili umuntu amunye kanti basaba nekuthi bangalahlekelwa ngumsebenzi nabangachubeka bagcinwe esitokisini. Inkantolo ibese ibaniketa ibheyili yemali lengu-15,000 emalangeni yathi ababhadale imali lengu-3,000 emalangeni balethe sibambiso lesingalingana imali lengu-12,000 emalangeni. Lendzaba beyisembi kwelijaji Mbutho Mamba. Tindzabeni teSwatini TV kubika Themkos Mavimbela inkantolo lenkulu.
Umceceshi welicembu levovovo Caleb Ngwenya uthi uyathemba ukuthi abadlali bakhe batawukhona ukugcina badlale kahle umdlalo wabo nelicembu leManzini Wanderers. Leli cembu litawube lidlala umdlalo walo wokuqala selokushiywe emhlabeni ngumcondzisi walo Sipho Bhembe.
Icembu levovovo lishiwe emhlabeni ngumcondzisi walo Sipho Bhembe. Leli cembu kuleliviki litobe lidlala umdlalo walo wokuqala selokwasishiyile emhlabeni. Umceceshi waleli cembu Caleb Ngwenya uthi uyethemba ukuthi abadlali bakhe sebamukele isimo kanti ngena lo mdlalo wabo bawulungiselela ngakutimisela.
Hope My boys are recovering from the tragedy of passing away of our director. I'm hopeful they are going to be strong, but we are preparing very well for the game.
Kapteni walolu qembu Thamizulu uthi kulukhuni kepha-ke bayadama kumukela sona simo.
It's difficult but we are trying. Anyway, alali ba-accepta simo sinjalo impilo injalo nje. Ayikho lengathini singakusho. But we are trying our best ukuthi yonke umdlalo siyodlala manje. Sibe sisi-right engqondo sikhona uku-accepta vele ukuthi sesilahlekele ibhosi. So kumele siye phambili impilo yachubeka kanjalo. Ilokho nje.
Leli qembu lisangase lakhala phansi nakumunye umdlalo selokhu iqalile isizini kanti litobe libukena ngokuchubeka nokudlala kahle. Kulo mdlalo lo dodlalo le-Prince of Wales embabane ngalesibili Ntsambama ngensimbi yesithathu lapho litobe litholana khona leli qembu leManzini Wanderers. Lobekela umsakazo we-Eswatini TV temidlalo ngiphathiswa Msibi. Anavuma Nkosi Sinzinisa embabane.
Mengameli wenhlangano yemidlalo wesibhakela Webster Lukhele uthi isizathu sokubamba imidlalo lefaka ekhathi bosaziwayo ukuthi bahlose kubuyisela lo mdlalo ebantwini njengaloku bese iyindlala imidlalo yesibhakela. Lukhele bekakhuluma ngemuva kokubamba imidlalo ekucala yaloluhlobo eThames Waterworld eStrokotho.
Inhlangano yemidlalo wesibhakela isebenza ngekudimisela ukukhulisa lo mdlalo wesibhakela efeni. Le nhlangano kulempela sonto beyibambe imidlalo lemkhulu lefaka ekhathi bosaziwayo eveni lehlose ukuthuthukisa lo mdlalo. Mengameli lenhlangano Webster Lukhele uthi lokhu bakwenda njengoba bafuna ukubisela lo mdlalo kubo bantu.
Inhloso yethu because sibhakela bese sinyamalele kakhulu sifuna lokusibisela back ebantwini so ukufanele bese uba strategic because njengalokubona nje labantu lebebenta lama exhibition bouts lebafana nabo Gedlembane bomthimba wawa bo Mavikane bantu lebane ma followers nabo nje ukwabona so lesikwendile ke short thina sigibela staff la kubo because if uadvertiser ngabo lama followers abo vele ahlale akhona and njengalokubonile nje abantu labanengi bebayile lapha bayobukela lokunye ke lesikwendile sizamile nalokuyikhipha live say streamer live sendela kubantu basalo bacala le interest yale boxing ibe khona ngoba lokubukela kutawenda ukuthi makunalenye fight lelandzelako ufise kubuka lokho singabe from here kuchubeka kuyapi by then ke sekuyakhona ke kuchubeka kuya embili.
Lemidlalo yecala befaka ikhathi Victor Mavikane Dlamini lobekatholana naThemba Mthimba wawaqaba. Kuthi Somahlaya Gedlembane atholene nemphatho inhlangano lengamele inhlangano tetemidlalo kuleli Dada Slomo kanti bomkantshubofu kulomdlalo uSimangashiba kanye na Frank Kamete nabo bebatholene. Lenhlangano ithi itawuchubeka naseminyakeni lotawo uyibambele namidlalo njalo iyabona ukuthi lisasasa likhulu. Lobekela umsakazo weSwatini TV temidlalo ngiphathiswa Msibi kaManzini.
Aledote imidlalo siyadiphetha tinza abadet fast bahlole timakethe nasibuya sidabuka lethu lothamba imbili kulamanye emave.
Nziki skim sami mayingiyabonga kungadisa ngempho lebengaze ibe imfihlo kulomunye umuntu ungadise ngesimo sakho sekuphila ne-HIV. Mngani wami yathi kuthi ngimi nawe waya
mngani wami ukwende kwaba melula kakhulu ukubhobokela ngiyathi ukuthi soze wangihlamula bunguwe bakho uyangikhulula kakhulu emoyeni wami. Ngiyabonga girl ungikhulula kakhulu kwathi ukuthi wena uyahlala unami njalo.
Girl sisonke always kuphila ne-HIV angeke kulushintshe nakancane lithambo lwami nawe. Mnganami yathi ukuthi ngimi nawe sonke isikhathi.
Kuva kabandi shayela 1212.
Intuthuko leKhonsile yintuthuko lesuka phansi emimangweni usosive lesinesidingeko sayo ingene emiphakathini kuboba betikhulu ikhulunyiswe ibusiswe enkundleni nasesifundzeni ite iyofika kuhulumende lowabatimali tekusukumisa leyo misebenzi yentuthuko nenhlalakahle. Bukela luhlelo sive siyathuthuka ubona imisebenzi lesukunyiswe ngaphansi kweluphiko lwahulumende lekwakha takhiwo letisekelwe ngetimali tahulumende i-microproject kanye na-regional development fund. Lolu hlelo lutawungena njalo ngalesine nga-8:30 PM kusihlwa nangalesihlanu ekuseni nga-9:30 AM. Sive siyathuthuka intuthuko yetinkundla intuthuko yemaswali.
Asibenze sinimukele ehlelweni Kusile Breakfast Show sibankhulu ukutholeni sihlalisene nathi sinivusele nani lensandza kusivulela kulesikhathi sidabuka letoti indzaba lethamba imbili kulamanye emave kanti sidaqala khona eveni laseNingizimu Afrika lapho khona umbiko noma ke imilayeto yekudududa umndeni wa Archbishop Desmond Tutu solo yachubeka nekungena kanti ke solo yachubeka nekuchazwa njengomumvu lobeka limela liqiniso.
The world's most prominent social rights activists and the man behind South Africa's dream of a rainbow nation. Desmond Tutu could fire up huge crowds while preaching his message of non-violence. He led the fight against apartheid in South Africa with his speeches. When Black Consciousness Movement leader Steve Biko was murdered by police in 1977, Desmond Tutu delivered the funeral sermon. There was a growing desire for revenge, but once again the Archbishop called for non-violence.
Well, it was taking a huge chance when I made them chant, we are all going to be free, black and white. And I said, let's repeat that. And they did. Deep in our consciousnesses as South Africans, we know we belong together.
This was his dream of a rainbow nation, a concept that made him famous. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1984 for his non-violent struggle against apartheid. 10 years later, when the apartheid regime had fallen, President Nelson Mandela put him in charge of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He spent over 2 years listening to stories of imprisonment and torture, stories that sometimes drove him to tears. After he survived prostate cancer, Tutu decided to move beyond the borders of South Africa to join the fight for global justice. From the refugee camps of South Sudan to the post-election crisis in Ivory Coast. He remained an outspoken and sometimes controversial peace activist throughout his travels. He attacked Israel over the country's treatment of Palestinians, calling it a modern apartheid. But his main target became South African President Jacob Zuma, whom he accused of corruption. In April 2013, he received the Templeton Prize for his work in the realms of love and forgiveness.
Can we then put the smile back on God's face?
Despite the terrible stories of those who crossed his path, Desmond Tutu's smiles, laughter and dancing showed he had a faith that could put an end to injustice.
Asike imilayeto solo yachubeka nekungena ekakhulukati njengoba Archbishop Desmond Tutu abengumvulu omkhulukati njengoba abeyingcenye yalabo labalwela inkhululeko eminyakeni leminingi lendlulile imilayeto solo yachubeka nekungena.
A brave leader, a father, an icon. These are some of the words being used to remember Desmond Tutu. After the outspoken Archbishop's death on Sunday, South Africans expressed their sadness at losing the man dubbed the country's moral compass. Some mourners visited his home in Soweto, while others gathered outside his former parish in Cape Town.
He was one of those people that held us together, that gave us a sense of humanity.
It's actually very sad, and I don't think not only for South Africa, but for Africa as a continent.
I feel very, very, very down emotionally right now because he was somebody that almost everybody liked, especially the kids. They love him.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa took to Twitter to pay his respects.
Desmond Tutu was a patriot without equal, a leader of principle and pragmatism who gave meaning to the biblical insight that faith without works is dead.
The Nelson Mandela Foundation released a statement calling him an extraordinary human being, a thinker, a leader and a shepherd. World leaders also recognized Tutu's considerable achievements. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the Nobel Peace Prize laureate would be remembered for his spiritual leadership and irrepressible good humor, while businessman and philanthropist Richard Branson said Tutu was a mischievous delight and profound thinker. The Anglican Church is set to plan Tutu's funeral and other memorial services, which will be held in accordance with local coronavirus regulations.
Kanti-ke nanome umkhuhlane i-COVID-19 kusasene netinkinga talabo labasolo bangafuni ukugoma kanye netinkinga nje letibhekene netibhedlela letiningi esifundeni se-Afrika. Lo mkhuhlane i-COVID-19 akwalithika bedi kakhulu kangako sifundza se-Afrika kodwa-ke emaveni lamaningi ulimete kakhulu iminotfo yawo.
When the coronavirus first hit Africa, many observers feared the continent's overall poor healthcare would result in massive casualties. Many Africans are high risk for severe infection due to diabetes and tuberculosis, both too common on the continent. But Africans make up just a fraction of COVID's global death toll.
One good thing for Africa is that the young population it's kind of an advantage for the continent, because even from the statistics for COVID, we have seen that the young people are presenting, majority of them really asymptomatic or mild symptoms. And so as a result, at the beginning of the first 2-3 waves, we see the reported cases are not so much in terms of people that end up in the hospital.
But vaccine inequities have left Africa vulnerable, with less than 10% of the population vaccinated. While vaccine shipments to Africa have increased in 2021, distribution remains a challenge. The WHO cites poor access to vaccines as causing virus variants and new waves of infections.
The population is susceptible, of course. The virus has an opportunity to spread and mutate very well. But we need to do more to cover more populations in Africa so that we can reduce the risks of all this evolution of variants.
Western nations' travel bans over the Omicron variant have worsened the pandemic's economic damage as many African countries rely on foreign tourists. In South Africa, the continent's worst hit by the pandemic, unemployment is near 35%. Frustrations exploded in July as political protests turned into widespread riots and looting.
The politics of hunger and desperation has really come to the fore. And by July last year, as we started seeing an opening up of restrictions or less restrictions, we recorded on the Public Violence Monitor that is run by the Institute for Security Studies the highest number of protests ever since we started monitoring protests in 2013. So people were desperate to be heard and desperate for help.
After the worst recession in decades, the African Development Bank projects an economic rebound for Southern Africa in 2022, but the ABD says that recovery also hinges on successful vaccination programs.
Kanzela siyachubeka njendzaba tetfu letibuya ngaphandle kwakuleli sifundza sase-Europe sibuka emuva kusukela lapho waqala khona umkhuhlane we-COVID-19. Sithi-ke siyabona ukuthi ngelizinga lomkhuhlane ogijima ngalo selithembale ukuthi utawushabalala kwangathi seliyashabalala kancane kancane.
In Europe, 2021 ends as it began, battling a new wave of coronavirus infections. In January, the Alpha variant, first detected in Britain, was dominant. By the end of January, Britain had the highest death rate per capita in the world. Much of Europe returned to lockdown.
The government is once again instructing you to stay at home.
But there was hope. Britain had already begun rolling out a mass vaccination programme using the Pfizer-BioNTech jab. It was a scientific breakthrough at unprecedented speed.
When the vaccines first hit the clinic, there was great hope about driving down the numbers of serious infections, hospitalizations, and consequently deaths. And that happened. We were in the middle of a big wave of infections, but we could see light at the end of the tunnel.
Europe saw a deadly third wave of infections in March amid accusations that the vaccine programs were too slow. Some countries suspended use of the AstraZeneca vaccine over blood clot fears, which many scientists say were overblown.
Of the 330 million vaccines doses that have been deployed, we are not aware of any one confirmed COVID vaccine-related death.
By early summer, immunity was building in European populations, and by June, much of the continent had reopened. But the virus continued to mutate. India suffered a deadly wave of infections driven by the newly mutated Delta variant. It soon reached Europe, and by the fall, Delta was spreading rapidly through schools. The World Health Organization once more declared Europe the epicenter of the pandemic. But the vaccines worked. While infections were high, deaths were relatively low. But in November, South Africa reported a new, seemingly far more infectious variant, Omicron. It has now spread to Europe and much of the world. In response, governments have ramped up vaccine booster programs, offering third jabs to all adults.
How this variant interacts with the boosted population is still something we don't know a lot about, and we're not going to for probably, I should think, 3 or 4 weeks. Another scenario that we could see, maybe in addition to a lot of hospitalizations, is a mass sickness. So a lot of people in the population getting unwell and needing to convalesce at home.
That would have big effects on healthcare systems and the economy. Scientists say the cycle will continue until a much higher proportion of the global population has been vaccinated.
So far, only 102 million Africans in Africa, or 7.5% of the continent population, is fully vaccinated. More than 80% of the population has not received even a single dose. This is dangerously wide gap.
Dangerous for Africa and dangerous for the whole world as new variants continue to emerge. As the pandemic enters its third year, it's still not clear how or when it will end.
Azike umkhuhlane i-COVID-19 solo uyaqhubeka nekwenda umonakalo emhlabeni wonke njengoba nje labanye abantu abakawa enjoy ama-holiday abo ngalo kokuthi ema-flights kulamanye emave akhanseliwe kanye ke nalemanye emave abhekene nebumatima edibhedlela ikakhulukazi lizinga liyanyuka lebantu laba-admitwako.
More than 700 inbound, outbound, and domestic commercial flights in the United States are canceled. Sunday's news comes after airlines say they grounded thousands of flights leading up to Christmas, with reports of pilots and staff falling ill amid the surging Omicron variant of the coronavirus. But at some airports, like the one in Newark, New Jersey, it's business as usual.
I came here for a funeral, and because of the importance of the person it was, that's why I decided to travel. But I do know the risk that I'm taking, flying and whatnot. But, sometimes it's not about you. It's about certain things that are more important to you in life. So that's why I decided to travel, essentially. But I am aware of the risk that I'm taking by traveling during this time of year.
Health experts warn that anyone in an airport will likely come in contact with the Omicron variant. But recent reports from South Africa and England point to promising data showing surging Omicron infections as being less likely to lead to hospitalization or severe illness. Sunday on ABC's This Week, President Biden's chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, said that does not signal the all clear.
When you have such a high volume of new infections, it might override a real diminution in severity, so that if you have many, many, many more people with a less level of severity, that might kind of neutralize the positive effect.
Fauci praised the president's multifaceted plan to have military personnel in support roles at U.S. hospitals to help deal with surging cases, along with ramped-up testing and stockpiling personal protective equipment. Still, he says, vaccination remains the single best way to prevent disease.
We're particularly worried about those who are in that unvaccinated class, that, tens and tens of millions of Americans who are eligible for vaccination who've not been vaccinated. Those are the most vulnerable ones when you have a virus that is extraordinarily effective in getting to people and infecting them the way Omicron is.
Despite the looming threat of Omicron and all the canceled flights, the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport was packed with holiday travelers last Friday, Christmas Eve.
Great, except for waiting for your bags a little longer than usual. But other than that, the flight was great, on time, so pretty good.
It was a little stressful, but we made it. We're here.
We had the first flight out this morning, so we thought we'd be okay. Worked out well.
Omicron now accounts for nearly 3/4 of all U.S. cases. According to news reports, the average number of new infections is about 165,000 per day.
Anti sesichubekela eveni lase-China, live lase-China selimreplaceile loyo abe i-Communist Party lobitwa ngekuthi ngu-Chen Shuangwao.
From Tibet to Xinjiang, Chen Quanguo was Beijing's man for controlling what the Communist Party saw as ethnic unrest. He served as party secretary of the Tibet Autonomous Region from 2011, where he waged a, quote, stability maintenance campaign, beefing up the police force and clamping down on Buddhist monks and pro-independence protesters. After arriving in Xinjiang in 2016, Chen began rolling out a sweeping crackdown on the Uyghur and other ethnic minorities in the name of fighting religious extremism. Last year, the United States placed him on a sanctions list, accusing him of conducting serious human rights abuses through a comprehensive surveillance, detention and indoctrination program in Xinjiang. More than 1 million Muslims are estimated to have been detained in so-called re-education camps across the region. Chen's track record of managing restive regions has helped him move up the ladder within the Communist Party. He's currently one of the 25 members of China's Politburo and could possibly be further promoted at next year's party congress. His replacement, Ma Xingui, has been governor of Guangdong province since 2017. With a background in aerospace engineering, Ma may focus more on Xinjiang's economic development. The quiet move comes just a few days after US President Joe Biden signed into law a ban on imports from the region, including cotton, over human rights concerns.
Kanti ngeminyaka wa 2021 live lase-Syria lihlanganise iminyaka lelishumi solo kwaqala i-civil war kulela live.
The city of Raqqa, Syria is relatively calm now after years of civil war, Islamic State rule, and then the devastating battles that ousted the militants. Parts of the city are even being rebuilt. Other parts are overwhelmed with displaced families from areas still at war. Locals say despite the relative safety here, recovery is a long way off.
We are psychologically exhausted, and the situation is getting worse. Aside from the sadness, the humiliation, and the destruction, all of our homes are gone. I lost my husband in an airstrike.
The Syrian civil war marked its 10th year in 2021, with many speculating that the government of President Bashar al-Assad will eventually retake what is called the last rebel stronghold, Idlib. Many Idlib residents are staunch in their commitment to remain outside the reach of the government. But the war is no longer so much of a popular rebellion, but more of a stalemate involving the government, Turkey, and other powers. Some parts of Idlib are held by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a U.S.-designated terrorist organization. Turkey controls other parts and an area that was only 2 years ago controlled by the Syrian Democratic Forces, the military of Syria's semi-autonomous Kurdish region. Violence continues in many places, but it is mostly asymmetrical, like ongoing skirmishes with Islamic State militants in places they once held power.
We liberated Raqqa from Islamic State, but there is a lot of work to be done. Our forces need support to eliminate IS sleeper cells living among civilians.
In recent weeks, UN officials said they were devising a plan to end the Syria security crisis, but gave few details. In the meantime, an economic crisis, exacerbated by the coronavirus pandemic, has made survival in many parts of Syria, such as Kamashli, a daily chore.
The value of life here is less than zero. If a poor man doesn't work, for example this man, if he doesn't sell napkins, he cannot even get bread for his children.
Nearly half the population of Syria has been forced from their homes in the past 10 years, and roughly 600,000 people are dead or missing. In recent months, outright conflict has quieted, but analysts call the crisis an intractable civil war with no clear end in sight.
Kanti-ke umnyaka wa 2021 bekungumlando wema-movie lakha ema-movie lafaka ekhathi ema-space flight.
This year, the world witnessed space history not once, not twice, but 3 times as the private spaceflight companies Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, and SpaceX successfully launched their space tourism businesses. Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic became the first to reach the space boundary in early July, while Jeff Bezos' company Blue Origin flew a few days later and a bit higher on the anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. Among the passengers was pilot Wally Funk, who at the time became the oldest person in space at age 82. But just a few months later, 90-year-old actor William Shatner claimed that title when he also rode aboard Blue Origin. Shatner made famous the role of Captain James T. Kirk on the iconic 1960s TV show Star Trek.
If you take a step back and look at 2021, it's been a really amazing year. I think that at this point we're kind of experiencing a renaissance in human spaceflight.
NASA's Misty Snopkowski tells VOA SpaceX's fundraiser flight for St. Jude Children's Hospital may have been the most significant of the year.
Because Inspiration 4 was successful, I think that's going to stimulate more activities in low Earth orbit and really enable more people to go into space.
The entire mission was bankrolled by a billionaire on board the flight.
Now, the private investment into space is bigger than the NASA budget. So the private industry is putting more money than the government is into space. So this is definitely, in my opinion, the inflection point for the industry.
Autry says reusable hardware makes going into space cost-efficient and more eco-friendly than single-use rockets. But he adds that it probably won't be us making those first trips.
I think before you see people, though, you'll probably see cargo. So you'll see sushi coming from Tokyo to London, in an hour. And that's crazy, but I know there are crazy people who'll pay for that.
In other news this year, NASA landed on Mars. The Perseverance rover, or Percy for short, and its travel buddy, the Ingenuity helicopter, began a quest for signs of ancient life. The flight took about 7 months before a dramatic landing on the Martian surface. That's all fine, says Autry, but he says the focus should be closer to home.
We could run onto Mars, we could spend a lot of public money, and we could stake that flag there and bring back a soil sample and maybe discover life, but it wouldn't have actually done anything for people on Earth, right?
What would do something for people on Earth, he says, is eventually moving mining and manufacturing industries off the planet and onto the moon. But before that happens, NASA plans to launch its Artemis 1 mission next February. It is the first of 3 missions with the end goal of landing the first woman and next man on the moon by 2025. NASA's Snopkowski tells VOA future moon missions will include a public-private partnership that will drive down costs for the space agency.
One of NASA's goals is to be just one of many customers, right, in this commercial space strategy that we've laid out. And so in that goal, NASA would be only purchasing what they need as far as goods and services go.
Before we turn the page on this year, a look at Space Oddities 2021. There was the first known French crepe made in space, tests on the immune systems of baby bobtail squid, and the first ever space games. For 2022, look for more launches from the private spaceflight giants, NASA's test trip to the moon, further research from Mars, and the U.S. Mint's release of the Sally Ride Quarter, honoring the first American woman in space.
7 minutes before 8 o'clock, sibahlele timakethe nasibuya sabuya siyiva lehlelo.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3 hash and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Intuthuko lekhonsile yintuthuko lesuka phansi emimangweni usosive lesinesidingeko sayo ingene emiphakathini uboba betikhulu ikhulunyiswe ibusiswe enkundleni nasesifundeni ite iyofika kuhulumende lowabatimali tekusukumisa leyo misebenzi yentuthuko nenhlalakahle. Bukela luhlelo sive siyathuthuka ubona imisebenzi lesukunyiswe ngaphansi kweluphiko lwahulumende lekwakha takhiwo letisekelwe ngetimali tahulumende, i-microprojects kanye na-Regional Development Fund. Lolu hlelo lutawungena njalo ngalesine nga-8:30 p.m. kusihlwa nangalesihlanu ekuseni nga-9:30 a.m. Sive siyathuthuka, intuthuko yetinkhundla, intuthuko yemaswali.
Using an ATM is a simple process. You simply insert your card, punch in your PIN, and withdraw your cash. However, this simple process can open up you and your finances to some dangers. So it is very important that you proceed with caution when using the ATM and never share your PIN. When approaching the ATM, it is very important that you have your card ready, either in your hand or in your pocket, so that you do not waste time going through your belongings, either your wallet or your handbag, as this will give opportunities for thieves to act. Thirdly, put your money away immediately. Don't give anyone an opportunity to grab your cash or your card after a withdrawal. Lastly, always take your receipt after each and every transaction. It is important that you get your slip after every transaction because it contains crucial information about your balances, and that may lead you to be a victim of bolandela. Be cyber aware, be cyber smart.
Do the most. Watch local TV on the go with the Eswatini TV app for only 20 emalangeni per month. Do the most with Eswatini TV app. Download from Google Play Store or App Store.
We're good together. Everywhere you go, MTN.
The minutes before 8 o'clock mbukeli pheta lapho hlelo lefu lamhla ekseni sibonga kakhulu ukuthi nihlalisene nathi kodwa kwashaya insimbi yesiphohlongo sethema ukuthi indaba nelanga lelihle nalelibusisekile silonje siyachubeka sanikhuthaza ukuthi nihambe nigomela umkhuhlane i-COVID-19 luhlaka letindzawo lalapho kujoviswa khona liyatholakala ekhasini letekuchumana ka Facebook lwahulumende Eswatini government kanye naka business Eswatini kanye netikhatsi tiyatholakala ukuthi kucala nini kugoma imijovo letfolakalako selong leyo AstraZeneca, Pfizer kanye ne-J&J. Sibonga kakhulu ukuthi nihlelisene nathi namuhla nisale kahle nibe nosuku lelibusisekile.